Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Community and Neighborhood Enhancement Advisory Board for June 3rd, 2019. Thank the board for all of us being here. Thank the city for coming and helping us through this. First order is call to order. Second is to approve the minutes for April 1st, 2019. That was our last meeting.
Move to approve. Oh, second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Very good. First item for consideration is street resurfacing projects. Status update.
Good morning. Thank you for your time and consideration this morning. It has been approximately 60 days since you last met. Even though the Oklahoma City area has experienced over 18 inches of rainfall during that period, we feel significant progress has been made on several fronts. Negotiation with consultants for design on street enhancement projects, planning and design for the first bicycle facility project, completion of ongoing resurfacing projects, and assignment of future projects to construction contractors in the resurfacing, sidewalks, and trails categories. Our staff will collaboratively present information to you today. As always, please stop us if there's anything our presentations don't cover. Quickly, we do have representatives for Wards 2 and 4 today. We appreciate you guys being involved. I'd like to go ahead and introduce Brock Miner, who will start us off with an overview of the resurfacing projects.
Thank you. Good morning. Like always, I'll kind of start it off with a bunch of slideshows and little presentations and all kinds of pictures. I think the first thing I always try to start off with is our status, our project status map. Since we have a couple new members today, I'll kind of give a brief overview on the street resurfacing. You know, we have a 27-month sales tax, and the projected is $240 million, and 168 of that will go towards the resurfacing, and we split that between arterial and residential, 60% arterial, 40% residential. And on the arterial streets, we've approved approximately 80% of that budget with projects, and then with the residential, we're right around 85% approval on that. And so we've really made huge efforts, and the project status map shows that we continue to get more and more green projects on there and a lot more of the red projects. We've actually, since April, we've actually started an additional 2 residential projects, and we've started 11 arterial projects. So this is kind of our busy time of year. As Mike said, we're getting a lot of rain right now, but in between the rain, we're making a lot of progress. The good thing about summer months is it can dry up really quick. And so as long as on the mill and overlays, we're not exposing any of the subgrade, and so things dry up pretty quick, and we can continue to make a lot of progress on that. One of the key things that I wanted to discuss was the fact that we have, since the projects have began, we've had 21 projects be final accepted through City Council, and out of those 21 projects, we've had an additional right around $5 million come in. So I know a lot of times I come before y'all and ask y'all for a little additional money when we get into the fine-tuning, the estimates, and the design of those projects. Every now and then we run into some potential things, maybe a thinner asphalt where we feel like we need to do a full reconstruct, and then we've also ran into some drainage structures that were insufficient that we felt like we needed to address, and I've brought that to the board, and y'all graciously accepted, the additional funds. But I did want to point out the fact that a lot of these projects of the 21 have come under budget, and so we're going to put $5 million kind of back into the resurfacing funds, and we'll be able to pick, additional projects as we move forward. And then we'll keep with the same process overview. We'll have our sliding scale down at the bottom and kind of go through the different phases of construction. And then the first project I wanted to go over was our Santa Fe Southwest 44th to Southwest 29th. Here's a little video of them doing some milling, and you can tell that a lot of they're taking out a lot more material. Usually we have just a 2-inch mill and overlay, so we take about the 2-inch of the top surface. Typically that's where all the oxidation and all the issues have came about on that surface, and so our intents are to mill that 2 inches off, get into a fresher layer of asphalt, and then we overlay that material. But in this one, they were doing a full depth patch, and they do that a lot of times. They'll take the mill, and if we've designated that area as a problemed area, and we'll do a full depth patch, and a lot of times they'll use that full depth mill to go down to the depth that they need to get into some better surface, and then they'll build that up with asphalt and eventually finish that off with the final layer. So that project is progressing along. Our next project here is Northwest 30th Street, Penn to May. I think this video, quick video, and it shows them using an inner layer. It's a non-woven fabric with a grid in that inner layer. And so a lot of times when we mill off that 2-inch surface and we still see some of the cracks and things going on, we obviously address those cracks. If it's a large-scale crack and it comes from the bottom all the way to the surface, we'll dig that out and we'll address it like a full-depth patch like we showed in the previous slide. But then a lot of times when we still see some of that stuff, we obviously address that with a crack fill material or crack seal material. Sometimes if it's real thin, we'll use a rubberized asphalt to put in there. And then if it's large enough, 2 inches or so, we'll put actually asphalt material in there. We'll clean that out and put that material in there. And a lot of times if we feel like we need to, we'll put an inner layer, or we'll put this grid system in between those layers. And the main purpose of that is to help with reflective cracking as it comes back up through the surface. And so it's a great tool that we use quite a bit, and that's what I wanted to show you there. And our next slide is one of the residential resurfacings here, Rico to Penn, Western to Penn. And this video is just showing, it's got the grid system. It doesn't have the fabric layer that connects it. It's just the grid, and you can see where they've laid that. It comes in 5-foot strips, and so they have to do some overlapping there. And this just shows, the ease of doing an asphalt overlay on that, and it will help with that reflective cracking coming up through. A lot of times this is a little stiffer material, and so most of the times when we use just a grid like this, it is actually, more times than not, we use that over concrete. If an older street has been overlaid before, we typically will, when we mill that off and get back down to the exposed concrete, we'll usually do a little leveling course to kind of smooth things out, and we will put the grid type system over that, and it really helps with that. Next project is our Southwest 89th Street, Santa Fe to Western. In April, I showed some videos and some clips of the concrete, the curb and gutter, and the inlet repairs, and so it just goes to show, sometimes the moment we get that done, the faster we get that done, the more we can get to the mill and overlay portion of the project, and this is just a good picture of the finished project. It looks like on that picture we're kind of right there at Santa Fe looks like towards Walker. My next slide is the Northwest 36th Street from Penn to Western. I know in previous board meetings I've showed the portion of this project that was the asphalt, the mill and overlay portion through the historical district, and so I know I had always said that it had both concrete and asphalt, so I thought I'd get the picture of the concrete portion here at the approach slab coming towards Western, and so I wanted to show that. Next project is one of the more rural projects. This project was an overlay. If we can on those, if the asphalt is fairly thin and it's not the full depth as wide as or as deep as we would like it, most of the time on our rural sections we'll address any of the cracks and any of the problemed areas, and then we'll just do an overlay. That way we can add structure to that. And here's one of the good projects, and it shows finished stripe. And stop me if y'all have any questions, because I'll keep talking as fast as possible. And so here is Portland Avenue. This is Northwest 39th to Northwest 50th. This is actually the Northwest 50th intersection. And this was just a good picture I looked at because it kind of showed all the things that go on with an intersection. We have the ADA ramps that you can see. We have the continental crosswalk striping that shows, and then kind of the little white specks on the mast arm and the pole is the radar that we install. It's the new vehicle detection system that we use. Instead of the loops, we put those radar detections on, and they can put those on the mast arms or the poles just wherever they need to catch the stop bar traffic that comes to the stop bar, and even, you know, in areas where the speed limit is a little greater, like in this one, you know, we'll do the advanced detection. And so we put that in two different spots, and it captures the vehicles, and so we know what's coming to the intersection to turn the lights. It also shows us a lot of challenges. You know, we prefer all the utilities to be off to the side of the road, but when they come to an intersection, they got to cross somewhere. And so this picture shows the concrete diamonds that we put around, looks like a storm sewer manhole, and then the other one is a water vault with the water meter. And you even see over there an AT&T manhole lid that probably hasn't been raised before they got this picture. But they'll come in and they'll do that concrete collar around those things, and it just helps it from you know, eventually, you know, traffic over time will kind of push those down, and sometimes you'll have a bump there. So they come back and they put that concrete collar around it, and it really helps from that, you know, deflection from happening over time. Absolutely.
Sorry, I apologize. So with the 44th to 29th project on Santa Fe, I know the Bike Walk OKC master plan has that slated for bike improvements. Are there synergies with regard to curb examinations or things of that nature that you work with?
We always try to look for that stuff, and I mean, it's a complex system with Bike Walk OKC and the 2017 bond, and then now that we're adding the sales tax portions, we're always looking at that. I think a great project that we'll talk more in light of is one of the projects we have a little further in design is general purging, and just how it ties in all the different funding mechanisms that go in place. But we do try to look at that and stuff, and we hope that everything will fall in line, and we're trying our best to make sure all of those projects interline. But without a doubt, we do take that into consideration. We have some, kind of giving away some of my speech later on, but you know, we have private development that comes in, and when they turn in their private development plans, if we know that Bike Walk OKC and we have potential bike facilities or sidewalk facilities, or even, you know, trying to think of we have Rockwell Avenue where we have a 2017 bond that's going to widen part of that intersection. So we're definitely taking that stuff into consideration, and we hate to, you know, redo any work, but we try to accommodate that stuff. Sometimes we have to go ahead and put that stop bar there and some of the traffic, you know, detection systems. But without a doubt, we're constantly looking at it. I know we probably don't catch everything. I know cities always get accused of redoing work, but we're definitely trying to have those connections.
Okay, good. My second question was sparked by the Coltrane project. I know the Oklahoma Department of Transportation is looking at, when they resurface county roads, that they're looking at the appropriateness of adding a 4-foot shoulder or an 8-foot shoulder when they resurface. Is that something that at the city level we're also synergized with?
Most of the times we don't have the right-of-way to add stuff to it, but we always try to pay attention. I mean, if there's shoulder or additional things we need to do, if there's, you know, part of the process of looking at this is, you know, accident rates and stuff. Accident rates are really only in the intersections, you know, compared to on the roadways. But, you know, if the speed limits are greater than 50, we take that in consideration. But most of the county roads are, you know, 40 mile an hour and plus. But, you know, we work hand in hand with ODOT. We have a lot of projects that commingle where we get 80% of ODOT funding. We call them ACOG projects, and 80% of that, and we function 20% of that. And so it's definitely a consideration, but more times than not, we just really address, you know, the issues of that road in and of itself, and just make sure that there is some good shoulder there, whether it be, you know, asphalt shoulder or the grass shoulder.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. think my next project was the Southeast 89th Street, Bryant to Sunny Lane. Last meeting, I kind of spent a lot of time on 89th Street, Sunny Lane to Sooner. And so this was the same process. I think last time I showed you the process where they go through the dirt work and then go through the stabilization and then they get into, you know, the asphalt overlay. And this was the same process with this project. I just didn't want to miss it, so I wanted to make sure and get the mile east and show you the finished product on Bryant to Sunny Lane. And then another project that we showed a lot last week, and we showed several videos of the curb and gutter being, you know, finished out and doing all of our repairs there, and then all of the inlet repairs. And so after all of that stuff goes on, we move into, you know, milling and paving. Here's a quick video of them milling. It shows the traffic control that's gone on to the left there to kind of move all the traffic over to one side. This is one of our larger stretches where we actually have 3 miles that are teamed up. You know, we go from Wilshire to Britton, Britton to Hefner, and Hefner all the way to 102nd. This is the Wilshire to Britton, and they are milling on that. And then our next slide will show some paving going on. It's just a quick video of the paving. Just shows the complexity there. You know, people are scrambling around, moving. It's an intense process, and a lot of times it can become very labor intensive, you know, when they do that. We did use the inner layer, and this is just a quick video of them using the pneumatic roller and compacting the asphalt. I really wanted to show that just for the inner layer that we talked about earlier. We did use that on this one, and so it just kind of shows it there. And it doesn't look like much, but a lot of times they work to get a different pattern. You know, when they lay that asphalt, they work to get different roller patterns and stuff because, you know, they're trying to reach, you know, a density, a 95% density, a compaction that they have to have and to meet the standards. And a lot of times, you know, they'll do that and they'll be right at 94, so they'll change a couple things. And so you'll get some testing labs out there and they'll work with different rolling patterns. And so it looks pretty simple, but sometimes they can make it pretty complex. And this is a neat slide. It just shows another tool that some of the contractors will use. It's a huge help for productivity. They call it an MTV. It's a material transport vehicle. So instead of the paver accepting the asphalt truck coming in, this piece of equipment will catch that truck. And the biggest thing is it helps from, you know, to receive that truck, get things moving. It has a little larger hopper than most pavers do, and so it will get that material in there, and it actually has a conveyor that will convey that asphalt into the hopper of the paver. It helps with that paver never having to slow down or catch that truck and have that bump. It usually helps smooth out the asphalt, and it's huge for production when they can do that. If they're able to get that piece of equipment out there, it's kind of an expensive piece of equipment, but when they use it, it's a big help for production, and it really helps with the ride quality of it. It's kind of a long video, but it shows it feeding into the hopper, and then, you know, the asphalt pavement machine just keeps moving right along. And here's another one of our projects that we did get started in between, you know, our last meeting and now. It's the I-240 service road between Penn and Western, both sides of the service road there on I-240. And it just shows, you know, our typical process. First thing we try to do is do inlet repair and do any of the concrete curb and gutter work. And then, you know, it looks like here we're going to have, you know, some ADA, some handicap accessible ramps, and they'll put the pedestrian push buttons, you know, the newest ones that talk to you and all that stuff. And that's usually the first step of the game right before they do the mill and overlay portion of it. Here's another project. I told you on that county road that we just did an overlay instead of a mill, and I just wanted to show this picture of Southeast 54th Street, Anderson to Hiawassee. It shows we addressed those cracks, and it had that crack seal material in there, so we addressed those cracks, and as long as everything's structurally sound, if we can, we'll try to overlay that just to add structure to it. And we did use the inner layer. You couldn't really see it in that picture, so I didn't want to say it was there and not be able to see it, but it clearly shows that inner layer that we used on that road too. And here's Sterling Canyon. It's southeast 164th to Air Depot. It's another one of our residential resurfacing ones. It shows the gutter work. We call that a ribbon curb. It's a little different than a normal 6-inch barrier curb with the gutter pan. It doesn't have that 6-inch barrier. It's just the gutter portion of that, but it really helps confine that asphalt, and it's good in areas where there's some drainage issues. So it just goes, when we're able to, we try to do as much of that in the neighborhoods as we possibly can. And that kind of wraps up my show and tell there. If y'all got any more questions.
Mark, I have a question. You said that the City Council has approved 21 of the street resurfacing projects.
Yep.
Correct?
Yes, correct. Whenever that project is finished, we have a 1-year maintenance bond that the contractor is responsible for. So we take that to City Council for final acceptance, the final budget, and then it also places that 1-year maintenance bond into effect.
For our new board members, would you just briefly go through the 2 types of street projects that we have and how the rating system works?
The prioritization method?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. Absolutely. No, it's a key process that we have. We have, a paving management program system, and so, for us to evaluate that, we try to, with all the streets, there's in arterial, there's some 1,300 arterial streets that we have, and so we plug that into that program, and we use a prioritization method. So some of the key things that we look at. Oh, thank you. Bring up all the points here. It's a complex process, but the main things we're looking for is the ADT, which is the average daily traffic. Some of the rural streets we may have 2,000 to 5,000, but some of the inner more urban streets we can have up to 25,000 to 30,000 average daily traffic. So that's a key component in that, because if a street's only seeing 5,000, hopefully it will last a little longer than that street that's seeing 30,000 average daily traffic. So we use the average daily traffic, and we also use PCI, which is a pavement condition index. We go through there and we rate that, 100 being the most perfect street there is, and 0 being almost a gravel street that's almost impassable. So we also go out there and we drive those streets, and we have a pavement condition index on all of those streets, and so that's a factor that's in there. So the PCI is actually, let's see here. The PCI is 40%. So we have those factors. 40%. The average daily traffic is 30%, and then our maintenance costs. So every time we go out there and we work potholes and any other maintenance, we have that value, and so we use that value too, because a lot of times our rural streets will end up spending a lot of money because of the maintenance and the constant costs that go into that, and so we utilize that. So those are the 3 main things that we use in the prioritization method for the arterial streets. And then the residential streets are a little different because, we really don't have, an ADT. So we still use the PCI, the pavement condition index, and it's worth 50%, but in lieu of the average daily traffic, we put in the number of addresses. So if there's 500 or 600 units in that neighborhood, that's the number we use to kind of in lieu of that, average daily traffic, just to see how much the traffic counts are. And then we also put in that maintenance cost per lane mile in that as well, and that's a value of 25%. So with the arterial streets and the residential streets, we presented to the board these prioritization methods. They approved them, and so we use that prioritization method to kind of formulate a list, and then we just try to go down, 1 to however many far we can get, you know. We've approved, on the arterial streets, the board has approved 94 projects. And so we've brought those in different, you know, time periods, and we've approved 94 of those projects. And residential projects, usually a lot of times, you know, it's such a larger area, and so, you know, you think it's just maybe a quarter of a square mile or a square mile, and you think, oh, you know, it's probably not that much. Sometimes that adds up into being like 5 miles or 6 miles of streets within that neighborhood. And so we've actually approved with the residential streets, we've approved 19, you know, residential areas. And so, and that was kind of based on my 80% of the arterial and the 86% of the residential. We still have some funds available, and I would say somewhere in the near future, in the next few meetings, we'll probably start trying to hone back in on that list and look at those projects, check for connectivity, run our program, and present some more projects to do. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That being said, I'll turn it over to the planning department for the street enhancement projects.
Good morning. Lakeisha Dunbar, Transportation Planner with the Planning Department. I will be going over items 3B, 3C, and 3D, starting with the street enhancement projects and status update. The board has approved allocated $24 million for 11 projects. We only have 8 listed here. That was a omission of the next 3, but I'll explain what those are in just a moment. The board has approved allocated $24 million for street enhancement projects, total 11 projects, and 100% of that has been approved. It includes these 8 projects here, and the missing projects are Meridian from Northwest 16th Street to Northwest 30th Street, Auto Alley along Broadway from 4th Street to Park Plaza, and Northwest 10th Street from Council to Rockwell. The status of these projects, we're good. The status of these projects is the Paseo project is in negotiations. The 10th and Vermont project is a traffic study is being conducted right now on that project, and that CEC is the consultant for that one, and they're an on-call contract. The Northeast 23rd Street project is in coordination with the council member, and we're looking at the preliminary scoping for that project. The Plaza area project, we are working to coordinate with the utilities department on that one. There's a water main through that area that needs to, there's some water utilities that need to be coordinated through there, so we're kind of slowing that one down and working with them. The North Portland Avenue project is in negotiations for contract design, and the Northwest 39th Street area project, the design contract with Johnson and Associates is going to council on tomorrow. The Stockyards project is in negotiations also, and the Walker Avenue project is in negotiations. And so the 4 that are in negotiations, the Paseo area project, the Portland project, the Stockyards project, and the Walker Avenue project, those we expect will go to council within the next month. And then the Meridian project and the 10th and Northwest 10th project has been assigned to Atkins, and they're the on-call consultant, and they're currently generating the proposal of work. And then the Auto Alley project is in preliminary scoping in preparations for advertising. Are there any questions on the street enhancement projects? Okay. So next I'll be discussing item 3C, sidewalks status update. And just a reminder here, we have identified projects by priority areas as defined out of Bike Walk OKC. So the downtown area is a priority area. And then there were parks areas that were identified as by priority, pedestrian priority areas, school areas, and transit areas. CEC is the on-call consultant for these projects, and they've been steadily working. And then the downtown area, just a reminder for our new board members, we allocated $1.2 million for the downtown area, and 100% of that has been approved. And these projects are currently in the scoping phase. A list of areas have been identified, and a map has been provided to the consultant for areas for them to focus on, and they're currently reviewing those. Access to parks, we allocated $2.4 million, and about 54% of that has been approved at this time. That includes 18 project locations and about 3.26 miles of sidewalk. And currently, Denniston Park is about 90% complete, and Sellers Park will start once Denniston Park area has been completed. And we've got a picture here that Brock will explain.
Yeah, we have a little picture here that I just wanted to have a few more pictures. Here's Denniston Park, and it just shows the complexity. You know, as they take that sidewalk through, you know, one of the big challenges is the driveways. You know, with the cross slope having to be a minimum or a maximum of 2% cross slope, most of the drives that we run into are greater than that 2%, so it leaves us having to fix those drives. And this is a good picture because you can kind of see the focus of attention they have on that the driveway there. It's kind of shaded in a different area because you can tell he's really trying to focus to maintain that 2% cross slope. So it's a challenge, but it really turns out to be a good product in the end.
Okay, so for the pedestrian priority areas, we've allocated $14.4 million, and about 54% of that has been approved for 4 different priority areas. And of those 4 different priority areas, it's about 34 project locations, meaning kind of segments of sidewalk that is being proposed to being built. For this area, for these, the Windsor area project, 60% complete construction. The Stockyards construction was to begin May 28th, and the Southwest 29th area, they're working on the purchase order and the work orders for those.
And here's a quick picture of the Windsor neighborhood. It's the sidewalk that moves along there, and they've actually, you know, you have a finished product there where they have backfilled that sidewalk, and they've got the sod in for all of the disturbed areas. They must have caught that before all the rain. But then on the other side, they haven't quite finished. You can see that they've done a driveway on the other side, and they haven't finished backfilling and got that sodded yet. So it's just nice to see a good finished product here.
All right, the access to schools areas, we've allocated $3.6 million, and about 47% of that has been approved, and that includes 17 project locations. Again, kind of project locations are kind of segments of sidewalk to be built. The Prairie Queen Elementary School area is 15% complete. The North Ridge Elementary School area is 75% complete. The Highland Park Elementary School area is to start once the Angie Depot area is completed, and the Angie Depot area is approximately about 90% complete. And then the access to transit, again, here we allocated $2.4 million, and about 59% of that has been approved by the board. And this includes about 10 project locations and estimated 3.56 miles of sidewalk. This one here is in preliminary scope. The consultant is currently reviewing these locations. So now I have item 3C, sidewalks, introduce project scope adjustment from Kelly to Prospect. The next one. So as part of the PPA areas, it was approved to fund Kelly Avenue for sidewalk, and the amount was about $320,000. Kelly Avenue was recently resurfaced as part of the 2007 bond resurfacing project, and with that, sidewalk was installed at least from 30th Street down to about 27th Street. And so the remaining sidewalk that could be built with the sales tax funds would be from 27th Street down to 23rd Street. Public Works has identified additional funds from another funding source that could complete this portion of sidewalk. So it has freed up about that $320,000 that the sales tax money that has been allocated for this project. Next slide. And so over the past couple of months, we have received a couple of requests from residences for sidewalk along Prospect Avenue, particularly to connect and provide for access for the students who attend Thelma Reese Parks Elementary School. And given the proximity of this project and a number of requests that we've had, I think we've discussed it a little bit here as part of the board meeting, we would like to suggest that the available funds of the Kelly project be transferred to the Prospect location. Next slide. So, and here's a image of the location. This is looking south, and Thelma Parks Reese School is located kind of in the top left corner of this slide here. So you can see the students walking. This is probably likely after school. There is a kind of ravine here. There's a creek that passes underneath this low area here. Go to the next slide. Here's a winter look from the opposite view. This is now looking north. There is currently sidewalk along the edge of the school property that ends about the kind of the end of the property where the fence is here. And so the intent would be hopefully to connect this sidewalk and connect all the way back up to 36th Street. We've had the consultant to take a look at this and they've established a preliminary estimate, and the $300,000 may be sufficient to cover this project. We still need to get that confirmed, but they have at least done some preliminary work and identified which side would be the most feasible side. There are some restrictions through here that we won't be able to do sidewalk on both sides. So just a reminder that Bike Walk OKC is a guide to help us to prioritize, but our goal is the city's goal is to install sidewalk in as many locations as possible, especially where there is a demonstrated need. Next slide. So with item 3C, sidewalks, we would like to recommend that the project scope be adjusted from Kelly to Prospect. So we're not asking at this time for an implementation update, but we are asking for a recommendation that the project scope for the funding of the Kelly project be moved to the Prospect area. Any questions on sidewalks?
I had one for the new members. You might say something about downtown. I mean, we think about downtown being completely sidewalked, as it were, but I know the nature of that is we've got places where there aren't sidewalks, and that's basically where our focus is downtown, if I remember correctly.
Correct. So I'm not sure what the question is, but we are focusing on downtown. So if you go back a few slides to the so the area that was identified, we just identified the broad downtown, the boundaries of the downtown area. But we did do some work to identify segments of road that were missing links, things where there needed to be some upgrades to curbs, to ADA accessibility for ramps, missing sidewalk segments. So those have all been mapped out. They were prioritized, and we do have a map that shows by color and number the different segments as they're prioritized, and that's what's been provided to the consultant. But I don't know if as a reminder, there is a transportation alternative program project that was funded prior to this to focus on downtown area sidewalks, and that one actually is about 60% complete design. So so we're matching that. We're trying to make up for those locations that haven't been caught with that with the transportation alternative program funds, and so then this will come back and pick up a lot of those areas.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's just such a broad area, and it wasn't like we were having to do all of that.
Yes.
We just have some fill-in that voids, if you will.
Correct.
So to add to that, I think, again, for the benefit of maybe the new members, but just my own recollection as well, what I understood and what it looks like from that slide is, so we're in scoping and coordination. As the scope is sort of determined, then we'll see more specific details as far as which locations are identified to be addressed.
Yes. I can bring back to you the next meeting the segments of roads that have been identified that were prioritized to be looked at. And then again, the consultant is going out and looking, and so the goal is to get as far down that list of segments that have been prioritized with this funding. We may not be able to achieve all of what has been identified, but that is the goal, and I can bring that back in next meeting.
So I appreciate the extra scoping on downtown. I have a 7-month-old, and pushing a stroller around, I'm well aware of the ADA steps that we can still take. So I appreciate that. One question I did have with regard to the Kelly project, can you elaborate on your outreach methods of interacting with the community on their recommendations? So like how many people did you meet with? What sort of diversity of meeting times or mediums did you do to get their opinions?
Being new to the process, I came in after Bike Walk OKC was adopted, and my understanding is that the public engagement for sidewalk projects, repeat which project were you asking about?
Specifically to transfer scope from Kelly over to Prospect.
Oh, okay. The transfer of scope. We received 2 calls. We received 2 requests by email, but they sent it out to multiple people. I'm not sure how many people. I know Mr. Thompson may have mentioned it at a prior meeting, so I'm not sure how many residents have reached out to him. But we did. Other than that, there was no official public engagement involved with looking at the scope of transferring for this project.
So I could speak to that a little bit because, I think I raised the question in this body and then also with the city staff. I've actually heard from the neighborhood association president, a few parents, and then also the principal of the school, the former principal, current principal of the school for it, because it's kind of been a thing since this board got created and since we saw the list. So I don't know that there was a formal sort of outreach process. I think the process is really kind of led by both the previous council person and the current council person, because that's kind of the length of time. And so I've coordinated to the extent that I was able with them, and then also tried to bring up the concern with this particular stretch. One other thing I would just kind of bring up, since this is one of the items for us for consideration, is the fact that with the recent sort of changes to Oklahoma City's both boundaries and then with the schools generally, this segment is kind of a key missing segment. It's the way that students get north-south between 30th, which is where Thelma Parks is, and then also where Northeast High School, which will become Classen High School, is also on the corner of 30th and Kelly. So from Kelly to Martin Luther King, Prospect is kind of the north-south. And so the feedback from staff, which I understood, was that because of some of the terrain conditions and some of the other challenges going north, that was one of the reasons why sidewalks had never gone in. So I think what they've done, and I'm quite pleased about, is they've looked at some ways sort of take advantage of the opportunity we have now to put this sidewalk in an area that was kind of historically difficult to do, but it's a big deal because those pictures you see from the kids, that's a daily occurrence. And in the winter times, it's a huge ravine, so it's somewhat of a safety issue, and the community is sort of wrapped around what we need to do to make sure our kids can safely go back and forth to school. With the high school now being more utilized, I think it's going to actually be more critical because there are a couple of multifamily apartments and things like that at 36, which this will actually kind of bridge a pedestrian corridor for.
Sure. Thanks for that clarification. I guess a little bit of background. I think this particular transfer almost seems like a no-brainer, the safety issue, the design, the school accessibility. I think my concern is more stemming from like future direction and process. I've heard from other community members that they feel disenfranchised when there is a scope change, but no official outreach. So certainly the ward member and I guess myself and Ward 2, reaching out to the right neighborhood associations and whatnot for input is an important part of the process.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think in this case, one of the things that's unique is that it's shifting resources based on sort of the timing of two different pieces of construction. I think I would share some of the concerns, but in this case, I think we've sort of coordinated with, like I say, both council persons and then with the individuals and the stakeholders in the community about the issue. We just didn't have a meeting or something of that nature. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions on sidewalks?
I think this is an action item that we need to vote on to recommend the project scope adjustment. Might also mention that with MAPS 3, one of the subcommittees was a subcommittee for trails and sidewalks. And at that point, no sidewalks had been built in our city since the middle 60s. So we've come a long way in a pretty short period of time, and we're continuing this good work. But we do need a vote on this recommendation to recommend the project scope adjustment of Kelly to Prospect.
I'll move that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item 3D, bicycle facility status update. Here for bicycle facilities, the board allocated $12 million for bike facilities, and $6.3 million of that has been approved. And it includes, currently the approved projects are the 11 that are listed here. And the status of these, weekly we meet to work through the details, design details on these, and we're setting a precedence going forward with key standards for maximum safety concerns. So this has taken a little bit of time here. We want to make sure we do it right. And so some of the challenges that we're working through are consistencies for protected bike lanes, on-street parking designs and regulations, transitions through intersections, design details of placement of pavement markings and signage frequencies, and then working through the cost estimates. Some of these may be changed. They were mostly based on paint and previously did not include conditions for resurfacing. So those are some of the challenges that we're currently working through. And then the status of these, they're all over the place. So here we've got Villa North, Grand Independence, Villa Central, South 25th Street, Wilshire, and South 59th Street. Most of these are on hold for a variety of reasons. Villa North and Grand and Independence are on hold at this time because we're coordinating with the BRT. Both of these projects cross the BRT, the proposed Northwest BRT, Northwest Expressway Bus Rapid Transit line, and we're trying to coordinate these projects to make sure that we don't get ahead of the game. There are federal requirements that we have to meet, and so if we build or construct anything before giving authorization, then we might not be able to utilize those funds as match for the BRT. So those are on hold for that reason. The Chartel to Deep Fork project, that one we're coordinating with. Melinda's going to come and give you more details on the Deep Fork project, but the bike portion of this is being coordinated with that, and so will be designed by Half and Associates. The Villa Central is on hold. We're in coordination with the Street Enhancement project. I think this is Stockyards area. It goes through the Stockyards area. So we've got a lot of overlap. It's a great opportunity that we've put ourselves in, a great situation where we've identified a lot of funding through street enhancements and sidewalks and bike projects, and now we're just trying to make sure that we coordinate some of these projects that are overlapping. The South 25th Street is in design, and we're coordinating that one with the resurfacing, kind of along the, I think the question that Mr. Carfang asked earlier, where we're looking for opportunities where there's a resurfacing project coming through, and we're trying to make sure we take advantage of those. The Indiana Linwood project is under design. The Spring Lake project is currently under design also. And the Wilshire project is under a traffic study. And the South 59th Street is in preliminary scoping. And the Lottie project is also in preliminary scoping. And then the General Purging project is at 60% design. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brock, and he's going to kind of discuss the General Purging project a little further.
Yeah, I'll kind of go through just a general overview. This project is probably a little further along in design, and like Lakeisha had said, you know, we're diligently working on our bike design standards, and as we go through this, we definitely want to get it right, and so we're trying to be diligent on that, but you know, as we get further, we'll obviously be able to get more projects in construction. But as far as design, General Purging is a little further along than others, but just for the connectivity and all the unique challenges, it was a good example to bring here today. You know, General Purging, from May to Penn, it really is General Purging, and then it turns into Main Street and goes all the way to Lee for our project. And that's approximately about 2.5 miles. The unique thing about it is it ties into Lee Avenue, and actually Project 180, you know, took over, and they did from Lee all the way to Hudson, you know, where Main Street kind of dead ends to the Devon parking facility. And so there's some good connectivity there. It will connect, you know, the fairgrounds to downtown, and it connects to that Project 180. So it has good connectivity there. It's very unique because there's a lot of different pavement footprints. As you know, kind of General Purging is a 4-lane. It's it's got that, you know, divided island. It's creek there, you know, but then it turns into where it's a 4-lane undivided, and then it just kind of changes throughout as it moves Main Street all the way to Lee. And so the one unique thing that we're always looking for is the different funding mechanisms. And so, you know, the unique funding mechanisms that we have here is obviously two of the major ones is here the sales tax program that we've already approved. You know, we've approved the bike lane project through this area. We've also have the neighborhood residential resurfacing project, and it covers the Penn to Western portion of this, so we'll be able to get that, you know, the restriping and all of the paving issues that need to be addressed there. We also have a capital improvement project that is from really Western to Lee, and so it also is a funding source that we'll use to repave the road and utilize the striping and things like that. There's even at Classen, there's a private development in that area, and so they'll kind of assist a little bit with when they make their changes. We've kind of coordinated with them, hey, you know, on the striping, please hold off a little bit. Let us kind of get with you and get our design details, as Lakeisha said, through the intersections and things like that. Those are unique challenges that we're focused on. But I just wanted to kind of give you a brief overview of that project and some of the complexity that it has, but it's a little further in design. But as we kind of fine-tune the design standards and get a little further along in the designs, hopefully, you know, by, you know, midsummer we'll have some of these projects in construction. This project, you know, it's got some different phases that we could utilize and potentially, you know, start on from May to Penn, get that phase going, and then as some of the other funding sources kind of kick in and get going and those designs coordinate with each other, and then hopefully we can kind of phase this project through, get some of it started, and then eventually get it finished out as the other funding mechanisms come available.
Well, that completes the status update of item 3D, bicycle facilities. Any questions?
I have one. Do we know the timeline on BRT?
The timeline on BRT, I know that they just did interviews to hire a design consultant, and I believe it needs to be completed by 2023. The whole project is to be completed by 2023. I don't have any other details in between there.
And so we're tangentially kind of connected to that project, it sounds like.
Potentially. We may have an opportunity to move ahead, but we just want to make sure before we do anything to get that authorization before we move on those other projects. So those could potentially get moving sooner. It's just that we want to make sure we get authorization before we do anything.
Good. Thank you.
So I had a similar question around the BRT. I mean, it seems like it makes a lot of sense to definitely coordinate. I guess my question is maybe about sort of what the process is looking like for the BRT, and in particular thinking about what impact that'll have on these resource for bike facilities, other resources that we could put into Classen to make it a more complete street. You were saying in regards to the time frame, and I know there's been a lot of conversation around the city about Classen in particular and sort of the pedestrian and bicycle and car sort of access around that road. Do you anticipate an opportunity to sort of have that conversation, I guess, in regards to what these bike facilities and these resources, how they would be maybe leveraged or connected to the BRT development?
I'll give a stab at it, then Eric can help me. So what I understand is when we did the application for the BRT, we identified projects that either crossed the corridor or were along the corridor that we had already identified funding for, particularly the Classen bond project and these two bike sales tax projects. We identified those as potential match for the BRT. So the total project was $28 million. About $14 million of that was awarded in a grant, and so the other half of that was match. And so we identified those similar projects as match to those projects for the BRT. And so that's how we're leveraging the money. The concern now is just making sure that, for example, the Villa North project, it only crosses the BRT at one intersection, but it's a 1.5 mile long project. So will FTA fully allow us to count that full project as part of match? So we're working through those things right now, those kinds of questions right now, and then we'll identify other opportunities.
I think just to help everybody understand the BRT, so Bus Rapid Transit is actually a project that our Embark and COPTA has engaged, and it's in the process, and so it's reported. We're just in the process of selecting the engineer, but detailed studies have not been done along Classen and out Northwest Expressway just yet. The work that was done over the past year included an alignment study. I'm trying to get that final alignment to complete the application for the grant process, and that's been done. And so we do have the alignment, which will bring the BRT from approximately Northwest Expressway and Meridian all the way down to Classen, south on Classen, and then into the downtown area. We're going to have a lot more detail probably coming up summer later this year once the consultant's engaged and has an opportunity to do complete surveys. I will say that there's been a lot of requests to reconsider and study a opportunity for bike on Classen in addition to the BRT. So those are things that we'll just have to study, and then part of it will just be what can fit. There's obviously going to be competition between a lot of vehicular commuter traffic, the addition of the BRT itself, and then also the accessibility, probably not just for bike, but also for pedestrians. And so obviously it's not a very pedestrian-friendly corridor either. So I will just bring those informational items back to you as the BRT advances, but it's going to be several months before we have a lot more information and can answer things like bike or walk. So, okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Brock, I heard you mention trying to meet standards in our design, and I was kind of curious if you could elaborate a little bit more. Is it for MUTCD or AASHTO?
It touches all of those. I think, all of those guidelines kind of give you some guidelines, and so that's the process we're working through. We're utilizing that. We're looking at MUTCD, AASHTO, and all these other design mechanisms and making sure we get it right, and that's kind of where we are. We're in the internal process of getting those approved, looking at those, utilizing, okay, this is the MUTCD, and we're going and looking at other cities and stuff, and we're trying to do as much research and development as we possibly can to get this right and get as close to right as we possibly can.
And we're also using NACDO as a resource.
Okay. Great. With that, for bike facilities, is potential lane reconfiguration and restriping a possibility?
Lane reconfiguration.
Lane reconfiguration, such as we have a lot of 4-lane arterials, but there's
Yes.
a lot of education about 4 to 3 conversions being potentially reducing crashes by 47%.
Yes, so some of the projects were identified for lane reconfiguration, And so for the ones that have been identified for lane reconfiguration, we have to go through a traffic study first to make sure that we meet the requirements for what we call a road diet. And so some of the ones that you heard me say earlier under traffic study, that's essentially what they're looking at, is identifying can that proposed 4-lane cross-section potentially be reduced.
Sure. And conveniently, the research shows that under 16,000 ADT has no or negligible impact to traffic. So I feel like we should have a lot of reconfiguration in the future. Last question. Sorry for being a newbie here. So I'm on the board of Bike Oklahoma, so I get a lot of outreach from people interested in road reconfigurations or bike lane design. Who can I point them in direction beyond Mr. Harris to help with regard to the actual design of the various projects?
Me?
Okay.
So yeah, well, I mean, they can start with me, and typically, again, we work closely with Public Works, and then eventually the Traffic Commission on those requests. So,
Thanks.
okay. Any other questions? Thank you. I think at this time we'll pick up with item 3E, trails, and I'll turn it over to Brock.
And here we have Bert Cooper. We obviously started with Bert Cooper Trail, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed. You know, with the arterial resurfacing, we kind of started with some early start projects, and the board kind of showed they would like to do the same kind of action with the trails. And so one of the largest used trails is the Bert Cooper Trail there on Lake Hefner. And so we did the same thing. We started it as an early start project, and we got that started. Two more trails have been given work orders, and they should be starting pretty soon, as Lake Overholser and then the Hefner Overholser Trail. So those are a couple projects that got started. But this one we've actually got completed. So here's a couple good pictures kind of before it got striped. And so it shows the finished product and all the things that go into it. And I know this was one of the first projects that we actually brought a drone video to you. And so we'll do the same thing here. We kind of start on Britain, and we're going south. And this is kind of right after a rain, so you see a lot of water everywhere. You know, the lake is definitely full. This is an area where those trees, we created a root barrier, and you can see that that concrete root barrier there alongside. And so we just kind of move south, and you can see the striping and all the finished product there. This was really about a 12-minute video, but we kind of put it down to 5, and we'll kind of jump and skip through it just so it doesn't take way too long. It looks like here, you know, they've jumped across and they're going down Wilshire, kind of the bottom part of the golf course there, as they move towards the Lake Hefner Parkway. But it's really neat to watch these drone videos. It's pretty impressive. And here we're kind of cruising along, still kind of by the golf course. Here's where kind of some boat storage and where they have that boat ramp, you know, going into the water. And it kind of zooms back. I guess we see the Stars and Stripes. I think this is over right by the Stars and Stripes. You see the baseball fields there as part of the park, and it jumps over here, right here, where, you know, it follows the highway there. And this is over right by the restaurants and stuff. The neat thing about this part of the trail is that there is the separation between the walking side and the bicycle side. And as we kind of get further down, I think we actually see we get to see some bikers and some pedestrians, you know, utilizing the trail. So there we go. There's some, it's hard to see, but there's a jogger, and there were some bicycle facilities. So we obviously, as we go through these trails, there's a lot of coordination with parks and all the events that they have scheduled. And we'll do the same with the Lake Overholser and the Lake Overholser Hefner that connect the two trails. But I just wanted to kind of bring that back to you and show you a little more drone video. And hopefully, as we move forward, we'll go into some more drone video. And if there's no questions on that, this time I'll turn it over to the Assistant Parks Director and let y'all see some more stuff on Deep Fork.
Can I ask just one hopefully brief question? Where did we land with the? We had talked about signage and wayfinding some time ago, and I'm asking just because I don't quite remember where we were, but we were trying to make sure that was sort of factored into what we were looking at as we move forward with the trails. So just maybe.
Yeah, I'll answer that for you, Brock. Melinda McMillan Miller, I'm your Assistant Director for Parks and Recreation, and welcome to the board, both of you. So Trails Pathway Signage Project is in design right now. We're actually bringing it to the Pathway and Trails Advisory Committee on the next, I believe that's June 13th. Mr. McKnight can confirm that for me. We'll be taking the revised drawings and some just modifications we've made from the originally approved plan back from 2015 for the advisory committee to give us some guidance on and approval, and then we'll be moving forward with that design process. But we're about 30% plans at this point in time.
Well, and on this project, our sales tax dollars, the first improvements we've done on trails was resurfacing basically the south part of the Bert Cooper trails. And once that's complete, to my understanding, that's the first place that we will do this signage package that is almost ready.
Almost ready.
We talked early on at some length, and I thought it made a lot of sense that this is an opportunity for us to kind of set a standard so that in future capital improvement, pushes, we kind of know that when you do the trails, we also have to do the wayfinding. So I just wanted to make sure that we were still on. So it sounds like we're in the process. We'll get a chance to consider that as we look at where we go with trails from here. So,
definitely. Yeah, the signage package is a total package that will sign every trail in our system, including the new ones that are coming online, like Stanley Draper Trail, the Deep Fork Trail, Greenway Trail. So the way that Half and Associates is designing that is a package so that every sign is designed and that will just be sitting on a shelf ready to go as soon as that trail is finished. And we can roll that signage out, have them manufactured and then installed. So Bert Cooper will be the first trail to receive the new signage. So we're really excited about it. We're ready to go.
And just historically, the MAPS dollars that have built trails haven't included dollars for signage or any amenities, bathrooms, lighting, water fountains, etc. So we still have a long ways to go and hope MAPS 4 can assist in that.
Yeah.
Before we go on with the Deep Fork Trail, a couple of ideas have come up on the Bert Cooper Trail. I went out and rode several times, and where the new asphalt is, I do not still understand how this is possible, but Bermuda grass is growing up through the new asphalt. I would think once it gets hot enough, it may burn out. And second, I located 12 spots. Of course, we've had 18 inches of rain since we last met, but there's water traps in several of the 12 actually locations that where water sits. Now, that one area that you were showing on the drone at the very first, the area on the west side of the lake where you put the tree guard to keep roots from coming up underneath, that water is moving from east to west and moving across the trail, not staying there. But after the first stages of Lake Hefner Trail that was built on the east side, we had real problems with water ponding. This time of year, you have an algae growth, which is like going across banana peels if you're on a bicycle. It's very dangerous. And I sent photographs to Doug Cupper, the Director of Parks and Recreation, and I guess the question in this is, the contractor that did this will come back and will hopefully repair with French drains or some sort of hydrology work to remove the water from sustaining and sitting on the trail.
And as a part of a lot of those punch list items, we do have a little bit of funds left. And so we did sit down with the Parks Department and we sat down with the contractor and we went over things that, Parks can facilitate and what the contractor can facilitate, and we have made plans to try to alleviate as many of those areas as possible. Try to regrade outside beyond the trail so that it'll be more of a detention area. If there is possibility, like you said, behind the dam, it seems to sheet flow across, but if we can help that and make sure the water doesn't stand on the trail, we're going to do that. And so that is a huge, it's a punch list item that we're going to work on. And as far as, the Bermuda grass, asphalt is, Bermuda grass will grow on asphalt. It will move over. It just, for whatever reason, it really sparks its interest and it really likes it. And so, Parks probably knows better than anybody, but they'll go through there and right along the edges and stuff, they make sure and try to keep that grass from growing on that area.
this is Bermuda grass that's growing from underneath 4 or 5 inches inside, going underneath the asphalt and coming up through it. It's not coming with runners over the top, although that's also a concern. And when you edge that, you can also, if you're not careful, you can erode the edge of the trail that's just been laid down.
Absolutely. We don't want that vegetation, and if there are areas where it is growing up through it, we'll definitely address those areas and get that eliminated. It's probably on the punch list item as well.
But the contractor would be able, what you're saying is there is funding for the contractor to cure the problems where water is sitting on the trail.
Yes.
By doing the resurfacing at the trail, it's elevated it up to where it acts as a dam and traps water, actually.
Yeah, any of those areas, and we addressed some of those areas initially, and we changed some elevation. We did do some slight milling in areas to make sure the water did get across. But if there's any issues that we did create, obviously we'll definitely go back and fix those for sure. And then other potential areas that were kind of problem areas in the beginning, we have gone through and we have a little bit of funding left, and we're going to try to address all those issues to make sure we can keep that water off.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so Deep Fork Trail, we are also at just over, actually, about 45% now. Plans have been completed. We are still adjusting the alignment a little bit. We just had a meeting last week, actually, about specifically bridges. We have to have about 7 bridges that are scheduled for this trail to get through and around, and all the different topography changes with that Deep Fork Creek created. And because of that, we're trying to identify some maybe modifications to that alignment to help alleviate some of the cost of those bridges. I'm afraid the bridges could take too much of the budget, so we're trying to move and modify a bit to still capture the unique topography, the unique characteristics of Deep Fork Trail, and what this area will offer for the trail rider and user without having to just completely blow our budget. One of the next things that we're really focusing on, that we're really excited about, is the connection to Zachary Taylor Park. This is part of that connection that Lakeisha mentioned about connecting to Chartel Avenue and 50th Streets, but really utilizing Zachary Taylor Park being a local neighborhood park. It already has an existing parking lot and park amenities to it, and so using both the GO bond funds that we have in place that we're helping to enhance that parking lot and some sidewalks, and then using the trails funds to extend a trail through the actual, see it there right along Aspen Drive back towards those houses, and then actually connect it back to over a bridge and then to the trail on the north side of Deep Fork Creek. We're really excited about this connection. It's one of those that we'll be able to give direct access to all those neighborhoods just south of there. It's also a great access for Bishop McGinnis High School to be able for their cross-country team to run on the trail as part of their athletic training. And then kind of show that Chartel connection. There we go. So you see the purple line is actually on street on Aspen Drive. The green off to the top left is the connection points where we think we'll be able to connect it back to the trail itself. And then the green dashed line will be able to spur. That'll come and actually connect to the driveway and parking lot there of Zachary Taylor Park. And then we'll all go onto, bike lane and shared lanes onto Chartel Avenue, and really be able to give a great, strong connection back into those neighborhoods. It was really important for us for this Deep Fork Trail. There's another location that, even though it's more difficult to connect the trail through a couple spots, we knew that the connection into an apartment complex further east was also an important connection to bring those communities into that trail and offer them as many recreational opportunities as we could. So this drone footage kind of flies the direction and the location that the trail will take through Zachary Taylor Park. And you can see it's very wooded and densely wooded. We will unfortunately have to take out some trees, but we always like to plant 2 trees for every one we remove. It'll go right between these housing developments, and then we'll bridge just over the creek itself, which we're going to fly over here in a second. There's the creek. It'll actually bridge over the creek onto the north side where we hope to be able to add in the future park-like amenities to that north side. Be a real fun congregating area for families to enjoy. So Deep Fork's coming along. It's one of probably our most exciting trail we're working on right now. We have others that we're working on, but this one's just kind of my pet project. I'm excited about this one. So, are there any other questions about Deep Fork Trail in general?
Yes, thank you. The initial master plan for trails in Oklahoma City basically tried to go to all quadrants of the city and do some sort of like a wagon wheel. And this link has been missing, which will basically run from McGinnis High School going east and connecting to the Katy Trail. But it was part of the 2007 bond issue, but funds have come from that and from other sources, and it is hugely necessary to connect our city with the multi-use trail.
Yeah.
So it's exciting that this is finally getting done.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And the last piece we're working on to connect that wheel is the Greenway Trail, and that's all bond-funded project in conjunction with ODOT. And so once those two projects are done, we'll have a full circle. So it'll be exciting to work with.
Any other questions for Melinda?
One sort of side note, a couple years ago, there was a 2017 Go Bond outreach event at Bishop McGinnis, and when I biked there, so it was only about 2 miles, I discovered there's not a single bike rack at that high school.
Oh, really?
Does anybody know of any potential changes to that coming in the future?
Not sure with it being a private high school.
Right.
But I'm not sure exactly how many kids even ride their bicycles to the high school. That's definitely something that.
Yeah, what I can tell you, as I attended Bishop McGinnis, is that the cross-country team will make well use of the trails with that connection. So that part is super exciting. Yeah, I can't speak to the bike part because when I went to McGinnis, I was driving 10 miles a day to get there. But I do think that connection point with that in the neighborhood itself, but also to the school will be a big deal. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Next is item 4, financial reports.
Good morning. Erica Vandershypen with the Office of Management and Budget in the Finance Department. Just wanted to go over the financial information as of March 23rd, 2019. You'll see that collections continue to be above projections. For the month of May, they were almost 9%, with collections of $9.8 million. Total to date revenue is $144.8 million, which is 6.3% above projections through the whole, since inception of the tax. The expenditures to date allocations, have been $131.6 million. So that's what's been tied to a project. Encumbered is $43.9 million, with total expenditures to date of $24.4 million. Are there any questions?
Move to accept the report.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is other business. Next item is number 6, Director's Report. Eric?
Thank you. One of the things that we put up on the screen, we don't get too many kudos for working on streets, but we did have a church on Southeast 89th that expressed their appreciation after we finished up down there. But I think as we just kind of recap the meeting and what to expect over the summer, obviously there's been a lot of activity in the last year and a half moving forward. And one of the reports that you received is that there are some funds that are not yet authorized or not yet appropriated towards a project, and those are some things that we expect to finish out this calendar year. So as we look at the last of the streets, as we look at the last of the other project categories like sidewalks, bike lanes, we're going to be preparing recommendations back to this board to include in an implementation plan. So until then, we're going to probably continue to come to you with some small recommendations like the changes that you saw on the Kelly Avenue sidewalk over to Prospect. We're going to be bringing reports to you where we're able to realize savings on certain projects and return those funds, but we're ultimately going to be leaning towards an implementation plan amendment, which will formally incorporate those, hopefully at the same time that we can finish up some more project recommendations this year. The sales tax will be continuing until early next year, and so we'll continue to make those reports, but the projections have been very good. You can see that there is a projected surplus, but we'll wait till the end before we choose to appropriate those dollars. So what to expect for the next couple of months? We're obviously going to bring some additional project updates to you. I think some of the things that are going to be changing those, we work on the plans for the general Pershing bike lane, the dedicated bike lane. As we start working on the streetscape projects and getting consultants on board, you're going to start receiving presentations for those consultants. We didn't need to do that on the resurfacing projects. We simply just did not need to bring a plan and a design to you for approval on the resurfacing. But we will have those consultants that have been chosen. We've got additional consultants to be selected, and we're going to be reaching out further to the board for your participation in the interviews and that selection process. So those are some of the things that you can expect here going into July, August, and September. But with that, staff is completely available. If you have any questions, we probably do want to set up some small meetings with our new members just to get the rest of the information to you and to answer any additional questions that you have. But for all of the board, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, to Jeff Butler and the planning department. We'll be happy to assist the best that we can. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Next item are comments. First, comments from the board. I'd like to say that in reference to what you're talking about, we're here until March, I think, of 2020, something like that. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
We're going to keep you a little longer than March of 2020. We're going to. We'll be taking the last of the tax collection in March, but we won't have all the projects completed by then. So I don't want to jump too soon and say we're going to let you off the hook that quick. But I think there's probably a time appropriate in the next year or year and a half that as we get and have most of the projects either underway or in the implementation phase, maybe that's something we can talk about.
Well, one of the things we've obviously learned is that our trail system, like the Burke Cooper trails, are certainly in need of an uplift and from a safety standpoint. The Running Club did do a survey last year and estimated there was 1.4 million trail users in 2018. So, but it was one of our earliest trails, and as we redo these, we're learning that there's a certain need for updated maintenance. The West River Trail has been closed, and the river used to be at a distance from that trail in several locations, and particularly two, the river is coming right at the trail. Wondering if there is anything that staff could look at to prevent more erosion, more soil erosion from these 100-year rains.
So yes, we were aware of some of the temporary closures, some of it due to a lot of the recent rain, some of it due to some of the alignment of the river trail, and so those are underway. I think probably one of the things that you see at this meeting is the partnerships that are created between Public Works Planning, but also Public Works Parks, so we work on projects just like those. So those are either maintenance of the future resurfacing or perhaps maybe a minor relocation of a trail in an area that's becoming part of the riverbank itself. Yeah, those are on the radar and projects that we're looking at. And I think that's just the ownership and maintenance of a trail system. I mean, we're going to find that on most of the trails, and as they get to being used more and more, I mean, we do have to treat them more as a public infrastructure item and not just a recreational item. So I can update on those. I would tell you that in the last rain events that we had in the past couple of weeks, we actually had 12 road closures in addition to the trail closures, just due to the excess water. Water's very damaging. Our river is still running quite full at the moment. There were some impacts to some of the river trail bridges that are also being repaired, and so a lot of that work follows a lot of these significant rains, and so we'll just stay committed to those until we get them reopened.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Again, would certainly like to welcome Tony and Kasia. Thank you all for being here. It's very important for us to have a quorum or nothing gets done, and not to jinx us, but we've had a quorum every meeting. So please let's keep that momentum going, and great appreciation for the board to be here. Any more comments from staff? Any comments from citizens? Yes. We ask, if you can, to keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Linda Gully. I'm president of the Silver Creek Neighborhood Association, which is in Ward 8, and also part of the Angie DeBow Sidewalk Project. This is a volunteer organization. With me today was my husband, but unfortunately, he didn't want to get a ticket, so he had to leave. He does a lot of the volunteer work for the maintenance of our front entrance, which is at Northwest 159th and North May. Also with me today, I have Mr. Donald McGlory, who is a concerned resident. So I will ask him to come up just for a few moments in a bit. The issue I'd like to talk to you about today concerns the recent sidewalk project in our neighborhood. This is part of, again, the Angie DeBow, what was previously discussed, that was 90% completed. I forwarded what you have right now, I forwarded it to Mr. Jeff Butler, and he said he forwarded it to you earlier, but I felt the need to come by and discuss it further. Silver Creek has 115 homes. The development is directly adjacent to the Angie DeBow Elementary School. The sidewalk project in our neighborhood only addressed 38 homes, and leaving 77 homes without sidewalks, which are actually feeders into those 38 homes. All of the surrounding communities, which is Seminole Point and Blue Quail Ridge, all have sidewalks. So I understand the project has already been appropriated and allocated, but I'm asking the board to consider maybe reviewing or allocating resources in the future if they become available to cover the rest of our neighborhood, specifically the 77 houses. These homes should be provided the same safety measures that the 38 homes currently have. If you look on the second page of that handout, there's actually a diagram of the Silver Creek area, and as I said, you could see where what has already been done and what has not been done. Walking to school for the children as well as for adults, I know that's not part of the project, is very, very dangerous in the areas that do not have sidewalks. Donald McGlory is one of the residents, and I was going to have him discuss just a little bit of some of the things he faces because he is an avid walker in our neighborhood.
Good morning. About a year ago, I decided that I wanted to be in a great physical condition. I in turn started a walking program. As of yesterday, 11 months from then, I've accumulated 6,372,000 steps in our area. Most of it, however, was done on the street and had no sidewalks, and had to do a lot of ducking and dodging to keep from stepping in deteriorated streets, parts of the street. The concern we have is that with the 72 houses or 73 houses that don't have sidewalks, it's something that I feel that we actually need for safety for everyone in our neighborhood. And that's basically where I stand, and would like to have maybe the board look at that. And that's basically where I stand. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you've got about 8 steps there and back. You should
I'll take every step I can get.
Congratulations.
Sure. Thank you.
So again, our purpose here today is to ask the board to maybe, if you can, review this project and to see if there's any other resources somewhere down the road where you could consider our neighborhood and consider finishing it off, and so that we can maintain a safe neighborhood for our children as well as adults.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments from citizens? Very good. Everyone have a safe day. Thank everyone for being here. We are adjourned. Thank you.